The best way for you to improve as a swimmer is to listen to your coach. But even the best coach can't watch every swimmer all the time, so your success will depend on your attention to detail. It's up to you to concentrate on proper stroke technique at all times, not just when your coach tells you to. But if you do, you'll reach your potential. It's as simple as that. In this video, I'll share with you the 6 most important things I think about when I swim backstroke. They are the 6 key focus points that work for me and that I practice until they feel instinctual. I've learned these focus points and techniques from some of the best coaches and teachers in swimming, people like Don Regenbogen, Skip Kenny, and Bill Boomer. And I didn't learn them overnight. I've spent thousands of hours perfecting each one, and I'm still learning. When I race, I don't have time to think about technique. When the gun goes off at the start of the 100 back, I just go. It should all be instinctual by then. When you try these things for yourself, it's best not to think about all of them at the same time, but rather focus on one specific thing each day. When you work on one or more of these techniques, it should always be in addition to what your coach is asking you to do, not in place of. All great swimmers will tell you, don't just do what's asked of you. Always do just a little bit more. Swim with commitment and focus and try your hardest every single day. Okay, let's go swim backstroke. The key to moving fast in backstroke is not to move your head. In this clip, I'm swimming race pace backstroke. I'm moving my arms and my body as fast as I can, but watch my head. It barely moves. Let's slow that down. Notice how my head remains rock steady even when my body is rotating. Holding my head rock steady and super still lets all the other focus points fall into place. A steady head helps me rotate. It lets my hand recover and enter at the right place. It lets me take full advantage of my pull and kick, and it sends me forward. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Like I said, the key to everything backstroke is keeping your head extremely still. Here's what can happen if you let your head move from side to side. Your body will follow your head and you'll move from side to side down the pool. Nobody wants to swim extra yards like this, so it's important to keep your head from rocking back and forth. It also makes a difference how you hold your head. Notice in this clip that I keep my head and neck aligned and stable. I try to keep a neutral or natural position, tucking the chin just slightly. Also notice my eyes. I look up and just slightly towards my feet. If you look too much towards your feet, as this swimmer is doing, you create a lot of resistance with your head, and you have to kick harder and pull harder to overcome it. Try to keep your head and neck in a straight line. Look up and slightly forward. If you get it right, you should be looking at the ceiling or sky, not directly above your face, but directly above your feet. Let's look at that from a different angle. Notice that my head is steady and that the water is touching my ears. I'm almost leaning in with the back of my head and the top of my spine. Leaning in like this keeps my hips high and gives me a more streamlined shape in the water. You can see this a little better from underwater. Notice how much of my head you can see. That means I'm looking mostly up, and then I'm leaning in with the back of my head. As a result, my hips and legs ride higher in the water, and I've got less drag to overcome. Here's a fun drill that will make you more aware of your head position in backstroke. Take a water bottle that's about half full and place it on your forehead. Then try to swim backstroke without losing the bottle. You might have to go really slow at first, but if you keep your head rock steady, you can soon build to full speed. Keeping your head absolutely still and rock steady is the #1 skill for a fast backstroke. Rotation, rotation, rotation. In backstroke, it lets you cut through the water, making it easier for the arms and legs to generate power. Except for the head, everything rotates when you swim backstroke. In this side view, imagine that there's an axis running from the top of my spine all the way to my toes. Everything rotates around this axis: my torso, my hips, even my legs and feet. Let's slow this down and look at one piece at a time. In this clip, watch my shoulders. Notice that each shoulder clears the water as the hand begins to recover. It's almost as if I pop the shoulder to begin the recovery. One way to think about this is to shrug your shoulder to your chin. Begin the shrug as soon as your hand exits the water. By popping the shoulder, you automatically rotate your torso and become more streamlined in the water. If you swim flat on your back, as this swimmer is doing, your body is like a barge plowing through the water. By popping the shoulder and rotating the torso, you create less resistance and generate more propulsion. In this next clip, watch my suit. You can see that I rotate my hips from one side to the other. It's a quick, complete movement. Here's another view that shows the timing. The hip rotation is a big movement, and it happens early in the stroke cycle. Let's watch that again from underwater. If I'm on my side when the hand enters, I can catch the water quicker and at a deeper angle than if I were flat on my back. Your hips and torso should rotate at the same time, and here's a drill that can help you work on that. Lift your bottom hand slightly, then pop the shoulder of your extended arm as you pull and rotate to your other side. Hold for a few seconds, then pop and roll to the other side. Rotate your hips at the same moment you pop the shoulder. Exaggerate the rotation. If your hips rotate, it's easier for your shoulder to clear. Try to cut through the water on your side. This creates less drag and allows for more power. In this next clip, watch my feet. Notice how they follow the rotation of my torso and hips. Everything moves together: torso, hips, and feet. This kind of full body rotation allows me to cut cleanly through the water and actually generates propulsion. Here's a drill that's extremely basic but gets the job done for working on hip rotation. Flutter kick on your back with your hands at your sides. Kick for several beats with your hips and feet tilted to one side, then rotate and kick for several beats on the other side. Exaggerate the rotation of your legs and feet. Rotate cleanly and completely. If you look like this, you're twisting your hips but not really rotating. You're still pretty much flat on your back and your feet are kicking straight up and down. Remember, backstroke is all about rotation. It's what drives you through the water. Rotate everything at once: torso, hips, and feet. One thing that people notice right away when they see me swim is my feet. I don't take this personally though. I know they're not interested in how big they are, it's a size 13 by the way, but how pointed my toes are. No matter what size or shape your feet are, you need to keep them pointed when you swim backstroke. If you don't, or even if they're a little bit out of streamline, it's like having a couple of parachutes at the end of your legs. Here's how many swimmers hold their toes when they swim backstroke. They point them slightly at certain times during the kick, but hold them straight up and down at other times. This can really slow you down. There are all kinds of advantages to keeping your toes pointed throughout the entire stroke cycle. These clips will show what I mean. If you point your toes, you don't have to work nearly so hard at kicking. Here I've got a relaxed 6-beat kick, and because my toes are pointed, I continue to glide through the water without a lot of splash and effort. If you point your toes, it's easier for your body to rotate. Here you can see that I use my feet to help initiate my hip rotation. If you point your toes, it's easier to maintain a steady rhythm with your body and arms. Watch this clip and notice how my feet create a steady rhythm for my body. As I increase my body rhythm and my overall speed, notice that I'm still doing a 6-beat kick and that the feet are still flowing from side to side with my body. If my feet weren't pointed, they'd rotate slower than my body, and this would throw off my timing. Pointing your toes is such a key skill for backstroke that I work on it all the time with dryland exercises and drills in the water. I do a lot of kicking on my side and without a kickboard. What I think about is, number one, pointing my toes. I think about keeping them pointed as I rotate from side to side. Two, I think about keeping my legs straight and kicking from the thigh, not the knee. No bicycle kick. No knees breaking the surface. You want to keep the kick within the shadow of your body. It's okay for the thighs to break the surface, but not the knees. Three, I focus on the down kick. Sometimes we forget that there's propulsion in both the up and the down part of the kick. In backstroke, you're kicking into deep water when you kick down, and this can generate a lot of power. So I try to maximize this with a strong downward kick. But the main focus is always point your toes. It's one of those little technique points that can bring huge results. Sometimes people tell me I look like I'm kayaking when I swim backstroke. What they're talking about is how straight my arms are during the recovery, how I turn my hand or my paddle just before it enters the water, and the way my hand drives deep into the water and immediately starts to pull. Here are some strokes in slow motion so you can see where people get the kayak analogy. I think the steady rhythm of my arms has something to do with it too. Here's a clip of a swimmer who doesn't have a steady rhythm and who hasn't quite mastered the kayak thing. Notice how each hand pauses after it enters the water. Let's look at each part of the recovery and see how to make it as efficient as kayaking. First is the hand, the blade of your paddle. It exits thumb first and enters little finger first. Thumb out, pinky in. Here's a different angle that shows thumb out, pinky in. When your thumb comes out first, there's no resistance on the top of your hand. You get a fast, clean exit. When the pinky goes in first, there's again no resistance on the top of your hand. You get a fast, clean entry that sends your hand deep into the water and into perfect position to catch and pull. There's no slapping on the water and no hesitation between the entry and the start of the pull. There's no wasted motion. Now let's look at what happens in between the exit and the entry. As I recover my arm, I think about keeping everything straight and in line. From this angle, you can see that I keep the elbow straight, almost locked. In fact, you may notice a slight bend in my arm. That's actually a hyperextension. My arm is bending back on itself. Nevertheless, I reach straight up, not out to the side. At the top of the recovery, I turn my hand so that it can enter pinky first. In this clip, you can see that I stretch upward with my shoulder joint rolled nearly out of the water. This helps me roll into the next stroke. Notice that I try to keep my head totally still as I roll my body and recover each arm. Finally, let's take a closer look at where your hand should enter. To continue the kayak analogy, you want to place your paddle in the water at an angle that lets you optimize your stroke power. For most swimmers, this means the hand should enter directly above the shoulder or just outside the shoulder at 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock. As you can see here, I enter with my hand directly above the shoulder. This is the angle that works best for me. I have pretty good shoulder flexibility and can hold onto the water at this angle. If you have less flexibility or strength, you'll get a better kayak action if you enter at 11 and 1. What you don't want to do is overreach when you swim backstroke. This is something every coach will tell you. But what does that mean? And why is it so important not to overreach? In this clip, I'm overreaching on purpose. Overreaching adds inches to every length you swim and could cost you a race. It can also cost you power. When your hand crosses over your head like this, it's hard to rotate your body. It's hard to drive your hand deep into the water, and it takes a long time to find the catch point of your stroke. Not very kayak-like. Sometimes you need a friend or a coach to tell you if you're overreaching. Have them stand on the starting block and signal you to make corrections. In backstroke, it always seems like you have to exaggerate a movement to make it happen correctly. So you may need to think 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock to achieve the 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock with your hand entry. Here's a drill that I like to use when I'm working on a kayak recovery. I call this drill the 3-second drill. What I'm focusing on this drill is making sure my thumb comes out of the water. I rotate my shoulder up to my chin, get a nice high recovery with my arm, and enter pinky first above my shoulder, always making sure that my hips and my body are rotating with my arms. Many swimmers think that if you recover with a straight arm, you should also pull with a straight arm. This can get you into a lot of trouble. Here's something that I see quite a lot when I watch age group swimmers or people who are just learning the backstroke. They send the arm in nice and straight, but then they keep it straight and send the hand way down below the body. They almost make a circle in the water with their pull. This kind of big pull may feel powerful, but it can actually slow you down. See how the swimmer is almost bobbing up and down with each arm stroke? how she's not rotating, this adds distance and time to every length. It's as if she were trying too hard to pull herself through the water. In backstroke, you want to recover with a straight arm and pull with a bent arm. It's all about physics. A straight arm is the quickest way to recover your arm from the exit point to the entry point. A bent arm allows you all kinds of opportunities to hold onto the water and maximize the power of your pull. I do a lot of different things with my hand and elbow during the pool, and I do them really fast, so let's slow this way down. Let's start at the top. I enter pinky first. I drive my hand deep into the water for the catch, and now I'm holding onto the water ready to start the pull. My hand stays anchored because I don't want to let it slip, and my elbow bends and rotates toward the bottom of the pool. This is important, so let's watch another cycle. It may look like I'm collapsing my elbow, but what I'm really doing is anchoring my hand and moving my elbow and my body past the hand. You can see what I mean if you look at my hand in relation to the mark on the side of the pool. My hand enters, anchors, and seems to stay in one spot, but my body ends up past that spot. Okay, let's keep going. Once my hips reach the point where my hand is anchored, I actually straighten my arm and send my hand deep into the water. It's a quick whip-like action that drives the hand down, then sends it up again to exit the water. Here's something that I see with a lot of young swimmers and even with more experienced swimmers. They let the hand get caught at the hip. They pause at the hip and lose all their acceleration and rhythm. You want to move the hand right past the hip and straight into the recovery. A quick downward thrust at the end of your pull can help you do this. The downward motion turns into incredible acceleration when your hand comes back up. You can feel like you're ripping your hand out of the water. Here's a side view at full speed. The downward and upward movement happens so fast that you can barely see it. Here it is again in slow motion. The arm is bent until it's just opposite the hip. The hand shoots down and up again with the thumb exiting first. This down and up sweep of the hand is more of an advanced skill, but you can learn it by doing a lot of single arm drills and sculling. One of my favorite drills is a sculling drill. I lie flat on my back with my hands down at my hips and just scull through the water with my hands. Don't try to push yourself through the water too fast when you're sculling. Just let your hands flow and feel the water, feel the strength in the water. I really like this drill. Sometimes we get so caught up in pulling hard and kicking fast that we forget which way we're supposed to go when we swim. It's forward. Except in backstroke, it's really backwards. Everything that I do with my stroke is designed to help me move forward, to get to the other end of the pool. If I deviate even just the tiniest bit from true forward motion, I'll lose the race. In competition, you can't waste time and energy going up and down or side to side. You have to send everything forward. In practice, I spend plenty of time going fast, but I think I spend even more time swimming slow and controlled, thinking about all the things we've covered in this video. In this clip and the next few clips, I'm swimming at a slow, relaxed pace, but I'm thinking about a focus point and trying to execute it with precision and control. In this clip, the focus is on keeping my head rock steady. In this one, the focus is rotation. Watch how everything moves together: torso, hips, legs, feet. I'm rotating around an axis that stretches right down the black line. There's no up and down or sideways movement. Here it's all about the feet, toes pointed, streamlined, everything moving within a cylinder that leads right to the other end of the pool. In this one, I'm concentrating on clearing each shoulder and landing my pinky at precisely the right angle to cut clean and deep into the water. In a race, there's no time to put my hand in and search for the catch. I have to hit it exactly right every time and without thinking about it. I do my thinking in practice. In a race, it's all about forward motion. Here I'm working on finishing each stroke, practicing that final sculling movement at the hip. I love this move. It lets me finish each stroke with such speed and acceleration that I feel like my hand is exploding out of the water. It's an incredibly propulsive move, and if all the other focus points are in place, it sends me forward like a rocket. For the final section of the video, I'll just swim, and you can watch how all the parts come together to create speed. I'll start slow and build to race pace. Try to pick out the things we focused on: steady head, rotation, toes, kayak recovery, the bent arm pull, and explosive finish. Are they still there when I'm going so fast that I don't have time to think about them anymore? Or do I need to slow down and keep practicing? For me, swimming is all about the search for perfection. It's a challenge that I look forward to every day. I hope this video has inspired you to look deeper when you swim, and that it will help you achieve your dreams. I started swimming because we lived literally 2 houses from our local pool. And when I was 5 years old, like everyone else in our neighborhood, wanted to join the summer swim team. And a lot of my friends were on the team, and so I did. And I was actually a good swimmer from a young age. I started swimming year-round when I was 9, and then from there on, obviously. But being good at a young age is actually not the normal way things go. In fact, I think at the '96 Olympics, out of the 35 or 40 swimmers that were on the team, there were only 2 of us that were actually ranked as age groupers in the nation. So most swimmers, if they're going to be really good and compete internationally, most get better at later ages. So just because you might not be a really good swimmer, or wanting to reach your potential, or just because you might not be reaching your potential at a young age doesn't mean you won't later. Well, I think I had a good balance of being, good as I was older in my age group, like as a 12-year-old, but then aging up to a 13, 14-year-olds, then I'd have to fight my way back to the top of that age group. So, every other year I was on the top of the age group, and every other year I was not at the bottom, but certainly struggling to reach the top. So, it seemed like I had a lot of experience of fighting my way to the top and trying, having to get better as I got older and more mature. And it's probably one of those things that, instilled in me the desire to, have good technique and to make sure that was a really important part of my swimming, because it's a really easy way to get better and to reach your potential. I was taught as a young swimmer good technique, but I think that the way that I am, I've always been very attuned to wanting to get better. I've always been very interested in the way that the water feels as I'm swimming, just the way that the water feels against the palm of my hand, and the way that I balance in the water, and the way the water moves over my body as I'm swimming. So I've always been really interested in that aspect of swimming, of that relationship between my body and the water. And so a natural extension of that, of course, is trying to get better through good technique and just feeling good in the water. Yeah. Well, if you're a lazy swimmer, streamlining actually makes swimming easier. It really does, because you can go faster with less effort. And the other thing about making changes, and streamlining is a good one. And truthfully, streamlining is something that I didn't get really good at until I got to college, because it's something it's one of those things I took for granted, not doing very well. And it's also something that once you break the habit of bad streamlining, you just never have to think about it anymore. I mean, I never, and nor does probably any of the really good swimmers, they never have to think about streamlining. Come off the wall in streamlined position, it happens naturally every time. That's one of the greatest analogies I ever heard, and it was actually from Bill Boomer, I think, was that the guy that touches first isn't the guy that swims the fastest in the last 10 meters, it's the guy that swims the least slow. And which is true. I mean, everyone is tired at the end of the race. I mean, without a doubt, everyone's tired. Everyone is probably the same amount, or is feeling the same amount of exhaustion. And it's the guy or girl that has spent the most time doing the right technique work that is going to touch the wall first, because they're going to decelerate less than the swimmer next to them. Well, my time in the pool was spent certainly working very hard, but I can guarantee you that probably 90% of the strokes that I take are thought about rather meticulously in regard to my stroke technique. There's really rarely a stroke that I take that I'm not considering technique or the ramifications of poor technique, or trying to change my stroke to get better. So adapting to a new technique or trying something different. By far, most of the strokes that I take are not just hard, but if I can, I'm thinking about doing them right as well. Those subtle changes that you make in your stroke will never feel very good, and it's just because you're trying to break a bad habit. And it's the hardest thing about breaking a bad habit is they don't feel right, usually don't feel right to start with, which makes you think that it's not a good change to make. And it's hard to, one, it makes you feel like it's not a good change to make, and two, it's hard to do, so it's hard to have the discipline to do that. So it is hard to make those changes, and they often don't feel good. But some of those changes do feel good. Sometimes, I think we come across positive changes on accident in experimentation with new technique, and something might click and feel really good. But even then, it's hard to work and make that technique change permanent. Going into races against competitors that I've felt intimidated by, or felt like that person was a hero of mine, that was a difficult step to take, and there's a lot of fear around going into races like that. And the important thing to remember, and what I eventually learned, was that no matter what, that swimming is ultimately an individual sport, and that whoever that person I was swimming next to had their own lane. They couldn't control what I was doing, just as I couldn't control what they were doing or how they were going to swim. They weren't going to be able to reach under the rope and pull me in the opposite direction. And so I had to focus, and eventually learn to focus on my race and just my race, and get away from kind of some of that hero worship that I think that happens, and being intimidated by people. But there's also an opportunity when you're swimming with next to someone that's better than you are, or someone that you might be intimidated by, or is really very good. It's an opportunity to learn from that person. Observe what they're doing. How do they prepare for their races? How do they warm up? Do you notice them eating something or not eating something, or drinking plenty of fluids? What are they doing right before the race to get ready? So it's an opportunity to learn from them to help yourself get better. And I know that as I got really good and became a world record holder and an Olympian, that people were doing that of me. They were learning from what I was doing, and that's fine. It comes around. It all comes around. In most cases, it's the favorite that has the most to lose in a race. So the fear of losing to someone that's better than you is not particularly justified, because if you think about it, you're supposed to lose to that person. So all you can do is get better. Now, that's not a really good excuse to not have a good race, but no matter what, you should be focusing on what you are doing. I'm not good at remembering stuff like that. Okay. I remember that. That's right. I'll tell you, I had two individual races at the Olympics. One when I was a favorite, I was a favorite in both of them. I was a world record holder going into both of those races. But my first Olympic race, I lost by 6/100ths of a second. And immediately afterwards, it was really devastating to have lost that race. And I can remember thinking to myself, what happened? How has this changed my life? just couldn't understand why I'd lost. That just wasn't in the game plan. And it turns out having lost that race is probably the most valuable thing that's ever happened to me. Not only as a swimmer, but maybe as a person. I learned so much about myself, about my ability to overcome obstacles, to learn from obstacles, my ability to step up and move past them. And it was truly that loss is the most important, probably the most important race I've ever swum. And to contrast that against 4 years later in Atlanta, when I swam the 100-meter backstroke and won the gold medal, there's a certain expectation that I think probably most people have about winning an Olympic gold medal, that you expect to feel a certain exhilaration and like it's something that could never possibly happen again. And I know for me, I certainly expected, having imagined thousands of times winning the gold medal, I imagined there to be some sort of epiphany that I would have, that the lights would shine and I would understand the world better and I would just feel just better at having won. And the truth is that after touching the wall and winning the Olympic gold medal, while there was a certain sense of relief at having done it, I can honestly tell you that I felt the same as I did after any of the good races I had ever had, whether they be at a zone meet as a 12-year-old or winning a national championship or an NCAA championship. It really did feel the same. Now, there was a huge amount of pride involved in that, and hearing the national anthem being played in my honor. The most special part of it was when I finally had a chance to share that experience with my family. But truly winning in the moments right afterwards didn't feel any different. They didn't make me feel any different or any more special. And so, the lesson kind of that I took from that is that, we have a lot of goals set for ourselves, really high goals, I hope. And sometimes you're going to reach those goals, and sometimes you're not. When you don't reach those goals, it's important that you do whatever you can to learn from your mistakes or learn why you didn't reach your goals, and to apply those lessons to future training, to future preparation in order to get better. But also, upon reaching those goals, a lot of people expect there to be a sense of complacency almost, and that's not quite the right word, but like there can't be anything better, and that's just not the case. I mean, there's always something. There's always a next, and having finally won that gold medal made me realize that. I started swimming again after 6 years of retirement, mostly because I got curious. I mean, this is a drive towards answering some questions that I started asking about 3 years ago concerning my ability to get back in shape, my ability to, how fast could I swim again? What were the ramifications of me being 8 years older than I was the last time I swam, and the implications of age-related training, and could I make the Olympic team? Could I win an Olympic gold medal? Or how close could I get to the times that I was swimming? And so it became kind of a quest based on curiosity, and I still have that curiosity. So I think I can make the Olympic team, and I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think that I could, because that's really the ultimate challenge. I wouldn't be doing it just to get in good shape. But if I don't make the Olympic team, I'm okay with that. I mean, I just, it's not going to change who I am or what I've done. And so I have really high goals set for myself this summer, and I'm very curious to see how this will all play out, because I haven't figured it out. But it's the whole reason I'm doing this. I'm curious, and I think that's probably what drives most of us, is a curiosity. If we're willing to admit that, that it's a curiosity to see how good we can be. And that's exactly why I'm swimming. And I love swimming. I love being in the water, and I love the challenge of making myself go faster through a medium that's designed to keep me from going faster. The water. The faster you go, the more resistance you experience, and the harder it is to go faster. I like the challenge of trying to go faster, trying to get down the pool in a faster time by using less effort. It really is what it boils down to. And so kind of wrap all that up, and I'm just having a good time. And so this is a real opportunity for me, and it has been. It's been a good journey so far, and I've had a great time and continue to learn. Have learned a lot, continue to learn, and expect I will, that this summer I will learn a lot as well. I think if I knew then what I know now, I'd be more consistent. I think I could have been more consistent. I don't know how much faster I could have been. But probably, if I have a regret about retiring after the '96 Olympics, it is that I learned a lot in the last year about myself and what was important to me about swimming. And if I have a regret, it's that I retired too early to really enjoy that, what I had learned in that year. And so I would be curious to know if I could have swum faster, really applying what I learned in that last year or 2 years of my swimming career. But I think maturity does have a benefit, and I think that's probably, as I go into Olympic trials this summer and swimming against mostly guys that are 10 or 12 years younger than I am, I think that maturity, that emotional maturity, certainly has an advantage. They may have a physical advantage, and I probably have, hopefully, an emotional advantage. And I'm not scared. I'm in the position now where I have nothing to lose, and I'm not scared of any outcome. So it makes it pretty easy. Truthfully, I kept my heroes pretty close to home, and I looked up to my family. My grandfather was an incredibly important person in my life, and realized now, even if I didn't then, how important he was in my life and how much he influenced my life. All my grandparents, really. I had 4 very amazing grandparents that were close by, very family-oriented. My parents as well were people that I looked up to, and I think instilled me with values that I use every day and will always use. And so I kept my heroes pretty close to home. I think that if there's anything I'd like to say, it's that, and this kind of goes to what some of the things that I learned in my last year or two of swimming, and that is that we are very competitive people, and almost always get into an endeavor with the goal of being the best in that sport or career, and it's an expectation that's very hard to live up to, and the pressure that goes along with being the best is very, very difficult for a lot of kids to handle. And so my advice for young swimmers or athletes is to make sure that the goals that they set are consistent with what they really believe that they can do. While you want to set goals that are a little bit outside of what you believe is possible for yourself, that it's important to realize that touching the wall first isn't the most important thing in life. That breaking records isn't the most important thing in life. That making your zone meet or your qualification time isn't the most important thing. That it's important to have those goals and want to achieve them, but not reaching them is okay. And that was a lesson that I learned really through some tough experiences. But I basically learned that it's okay to fail. And I don't even like to use that word. But it's okay to have setbacks. It's how you react to those setbacks that is the most important thing. It's going to define you as a person or as an athlete or a competitor. But that you're not going to succeed every single time you set out to do something. I certainly didn't, and I had a successful career. And I can look back and tell you that most of the goals that I set for myself I didn't accomplish. But again, it's okay to not do well every single time, as long as when you don't do well, that you're learning about yourself and maybe why you didn't, and applying those things to try to make yourself the best that you can be in the future.